Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back to DIT2114 Internet Programming. So today we will continue our discussion with topic number 6, form validation and security. Okay. So let's move on to our first topic, first slides for this topic. So this topic will shift our focus for basic functionality to application safety. So we must ensure all user data is correct, clean, and also safe to process. A proper security protect your application and its users from malicious attack. It is important, critical step for developing professional, production-ready web application. A robust security requires combining both client-side and server-side technique. So we will cover the data integrity, the validation, the sanitization, and key security concepts. So this combination will ensure a complete and a multi-layered defense strategy. Okay, data validation and sanitization. Okay, so validation, we want to check if the data meets the specific necessary rules of criteria. So we ask if the data has the correct format or is for the right length. So for example, like, is this text a valid, well-formed email address format? And then we have the sanitization. Is the process of cleaning or filtering the incoming data. It removes potentially harmful or unwanted characters from the input string. So sanitization will ensure that many or any harmful scripts are removed from the text input. So both process, the validation and the sanitization, will absolutely important, essential for data integrity and application security. Okay, so why the client-side validation? So the client-side validation offer a much improved, faster user experience. It provides immediate, responsive feedback directly to the user in the browser. So this guidance will help the user correctly fill out the form that very first time and reduce the overall server load by catching simple error early. So this prevent unnecessary HTTP requests from being sent to the server, and it is performed using JavaScript or simple HTML5 attributes in the browser. Okay, next, the critical limitation of client-side validation. So the client-side validation is a usability features, but it is not secure. It is easily bypassed if a user simply disable JavaScript in the browser. A malicious user can send crafted direct HTTP requests to your server. So therefore, you must never trust any data that comes directly from the client. A client side will check is solely for a better, more helpful user experience. The server-side validation is non-negotiable and mandatory for true security. Okay, HTML5 built-in form validation attribute. So we have the required attribute that specify that an input field must be filled out. So using a type email automatically will check for a basic email address format. Setting type with number. This will restrict the user input to only numerical values. So you can use the pattern attributes with regex, regenerates to validate the input. Minimum length, min length, and maximum length define the character length limit for a field. So all of these attributes provide immediate non-JavaScript validation feedback. Okay, next we have the JavaScript validation. we're checking for empty fields. So you must check if the value is just an empty string or consists only of white space. So you need to use the trim method to effectively remove any white space from both ends. So an example check is if the user name input dot value dot trim triple equal to look for emptiness. Okay, so this we want to look for any empty data. If the validation fails, you must show a clear specific error message. So this error message should be placed right next to the relevant form field. The simple check is a fundamental part of all client-side form validation logic. Okay, JavaScript validation with regular expression, regex. So the regular expression defined as a powerful search pattern. They are incredibly effective for validating a complex string format's reliability. In JavaScript, you use the test method or the match method with a regex. Okay, regular expression. So the test method will return a simple true or false results quickly. So for example here, we have is a email validation for a common pattern. Okay, this pattern will check for tags following by the alias, the more tags and then the period. Okay, so this line will let is valid equal to email regex dot test email input dot value will execute the check. Okay, regex will allow you to enforce a strict rules on data like username and password. Okay, common JavaScript validation pattern. Okay, email, phone number. This is simple phone number with digits, 10 to 15 digits, and then username with alphanumeric letter, number, and underscore. Password string, 1 digit, 1 lowercase, 1 upper, 8 character. So we can use this pattern. It's very important to ensure the complex data meets the required standards. So you can use online tools like the regex101 to build and test your own pattern. Okay, next we have providing user feedback in JavaScript. So when we do the validation fails, you should dynamically show an error message element. So a small span tag next to the input is a common way to display this. Okay, so you can change the input field CSS styles, perhaps adding a red border. Error message must be clear and explain how the user can fix the problem. So it's very important to clear the error message and styling once the user correct the input. So listen for events like input or to validate as the user is actively typing. Okay. Why the server-side validation is mandatory? So the server-side validation is absolutely mandatory and is not negotiable. The client environment is completely untrustworthy for security purpose. So each server as the final crucial line of defense for your application. So this will prevent corrupted, malformed or malicious data from being processed. It is essential for strict enforcing your application's business rules and data integrity. Okay. Server-side validation with PHP initial checks. Okay, so in PHP we have the first check if the form has actually submitted by using the post method. Okay, so use if server request method equal to post to confirm the form submission. Okay, so always use the isSet post field name to confirm a variable exists. The empty method function is useful to check if a required field has no value. Initialize an array like the arrow equal to null to effectively collect all message. So you can then loop through this array to display all the error message. Okay, validating specific data types in PHP. So PHP filter var method is a great tool for validating specific data formats. For email, we use the filter validate email with the filter var for a robust check. So we will use the filter validate URL to easily check if a website address is valid. To check the number, use is number or filter validate int or float. Okay, this is for number checking. So you can check the string length using string len, strlen, trim post message. Okay, so trimming the white space first is important before checking the actual length. Sanitizing user input in PHP. So sanitization, as we have discussed previously, is the process of cleaning the data to remove any unwanted characters. Okay, so we use the trim input function to remove the white space from both the beginning and the end. And we use the strip underscore tag input to completely remove any embedded PHP and HTML text. The HTML characters input will convert special character like the less than, the greater than, this apostrophe, and into the HTML attribute. So this will escaping is vital to prevent a cross-site scripting, which we will cover later on. Okay, so you should sanitize the data before displaying back to the user in HTML. Okay, next up we have the PHP filter underscore var method or functions for sanitization. Okay, so the filter var function is also one of powerful tools for sanitizing the data. Filter sanitize email. This will remove all characters not allowed in an email address. And then similarly, we have the filter sanitize URL. This will clean the characters not permitted in the web URL. And using the filter sanitize special character is equivalent to using HTML special character function. Okay, you need to note that the filter sanitizing string is deprecated and should not be used in modern PHP. So this sanitization will provide a consistent and easy way to clean inputs. Okay, the validation and sanitization workflow. Okay, so the first step is to always receive the raw user input, typically from the post. Okay, next you must validate the data against all your established rules. If validation fails, you add this specific error to your error arrays. If the data pass validation, you then immediately sanitize the input. The sanitization is performed based on the specific purpose of the clean data. And then finally, you use this clean, safe data for business logic or database query. Displaying server-side errors to user. So if the error array is not empty, you need to loop through on the front end. Okay, display each error message clearly next to the corresponding form field. Important, you must repopulate the form field with the user original input. So this provide a user experience similar to responsive client-side validation. Remember to use HTML special character function when outputting this all user input into HTML. Okay, example is input value equal to PHP echo HTML special character all email. Okay, so this will prevent potential cross-scripting XSS attack from the very data that you are repopulating. Okay, web application security fundamental. Okay, so internet is the hostile environment. Okay, constantly will probe for application weakness. Security is a fundamental aspect of development, not just an added value. So we will focus on preventing the two most common and critical web vulnerabilities. So understanding how a web attack works is the first step towards effective prevention. Even a small oversight in code can unfortunately lead to massive data breaches. So we will cover the SQL injection and cross-site scripting, which are the biggest risks. Okay, so common vulnerability number one is the SQL injection, the SQLI. Okay, so the SQL injection, this is an attack where the malicious SQL code is injected. So it will happen when the user input is directly concentrated into an SQL query string. Okay, the attacker can read, can modify, or even delete data they should not access. Okay, they can potentially bypass authentication and gain full administrator privileges. This is one of the oldest, most common, and most extremely dangerous web vulnerabilities. So the SQL injection attack exploit a fundamental mistake, treating user as trusted code. Okay. Next, we have the example of SQLi attack. Okay, so consider a login query built with simple string concentration. Okay, so the query is vulnerable if the username variables is inserted directly. Okay, an attacker can enter O1 equal to 1 as the username input value. The database query then will become where the username O1 equal to 1. Okay, so the condition is 1 equal to 1 is always logically true regardless of the password. Okay, so the query then returns data for every single user in the whole table. So the attacker successfully login in as the very first user, often the main administrator. Okay, how we able to prevent the SQL injection? Okay, with the prepared statement. Okay, so prepared statement are the only true reliable way to prevent SQL injection. Okay, so the first SQL query structure is sent to the database first using a placeholder. These placeholders are represented by question marks or name variables. Okay, important. The user data is then sent to the database separately from the query. So the database engine knows the data is just data, not an executable SQL command. So this separation completely neutralizes the possibility of any SQL injection. Okay. Prepared statement with MySQLi injection procedural. Okay, so this is the first step in preparing this statement by using the MySQLi prepare function. Okay, the query string include placeholder represented by question marks. Okay, the question mark symbols. Next, you will bind the user parameters to this placeholder with MySQLi statement bind param function. Okay. So the SS parameter, this define the data types S from string, I for integer, and so on. Okay, so you execute the parameter statement using MySQLi statement execute statement. Okay, so finally, it is a good practice to close this statement with MySQLi statement close. Okay, so this procedural style is a classic way to implement prepared statement effectively. Okay, next up we have the pragmatic statement with PDO for object oriented. Okay, so PDO stands for PHP data object. PDO, okay, PHP data object, and it is a generally a modern preferred choice. Okay, so the statement is prepared using the object oriented method with the PDO prepared. Okay, so the PDO will allow for name placeholder like the email name inside the query, so you can explicitly bind the parameter using the method of statement bind param. Okay, so you can execute the statement by passing an array for the value. So basically the PDO, this is more flexible and support connecting to a multiple database drivers. Okay, so this method is clear, concise, and highly recommended for modern PHP development. Okay, next we have a common vulnerability with the cross-site scripting XSS. So the cross-site scripting, okay, involve injecting malicious script into trusted website. So this script will execute directly within the victim web browser when they view the email. And the attacker script can steal sensitive information like cookies and session tokens. Okay, they can also deface the website or redirect the user to a completely malicious software. So basically the SSS happen when the user input is displayed on a page without proper escaping. Okay, so this kind of attack trick the browser into executing input as code instead of displaying it as a text. Okay, stored versus reflected cross-site scripting. Okay, we have the stored XSS. The cross-site scripting is when the malicious script is permanently stored on the server. So this could be in the database, a forum post, or even a simple command section. Storing the SSS is more severe because it affects every single user who views the content. And then we have the reflected XSS. This involves a script being reflected off the server immediately. So this is often seen in an escape error message or search results page. So the victim is usually will trick into clicking a specially crafted malicious link. So the cross-site scripting attack example. So imagine you have a vulnerabilities command from a form that where the comments are stored and then displayed. So the attacker posts a comment containing a script. Okay, like for example, a script alerts, a success script. Okay, if this comment is displayed without any escaping, the script tag execute immediately. So while alert is harmless, a real attack script would steal the user session cookie. So the stolen cookie is then sent to the attacker server to hijack the user session. How we prevent the SSS with output escaping? So the primary and most effective defense against the SSS is called the output escaping. Escaping means converting a special character into the corresponding HTML entirely equivalent. For example, like the less than sign, this sign become, and the greatest than sign become this sign. Okay, and this will ensure that the browser will interpret the data as a simple text, not executable HTML or JavaScript. So in PHP, you should use the function HTML special character data and quotes UTF-8 function. So this function able to handle all the necessary conversion to make the output safe. Okay, where to apply the cross-site scripting protection? So you must apply the x-axis protection every single time you output the data from an external source. External source include data from user, database, external APIs or files. Okay, common places for escaping and inside the PHP echo or print statement. So you must escape when outputting data inside HTML attributes such as an input value. For example, like div PHP echo HTML special character use command. This is safe. Okay, input value PHP echo HTML special character search terms. So this is also safe. If you forgot to escape when even one location, your entire application will remain vulnerable. Okay, secure user authentication with password hashing. Okay, this is one of the critical rules. So you must absolutely never store any user password in plain text. Okay, if your database is breached, all plain text password would be immediately compromised. Instead, use a strong one-way hashing algorithm like the bcrypt or Argon2. Okay, so this algorithm create a unique scrambled hash that cannot be easily reversed. Okay, in modern PHP, you use the built-in password hash function for this purpose. So this command hash password defaults create the hash. Okay, you store only the generated hash value in your database, not in the original password. Okay, verifying the password. So when the user attempt to log in, you must verify the provided password. You verify it against the secure hash that is already stored in your database. Do this using the safe and powerful password verifier function in PHP. It takes the entire password and stored hash as into arguments. So this function automatically handles the complex sorts and algorithm comparison process. Okay, secure session. Okay, starting and managing session used to maintain a user state across multiple HTTP requests. So you must start a session with session start, and then at the very top of the page, after a successful login, you store essential user data like the user ID in session. This server will send a unique session ID to the browser via a special cookie, often the PHP sys ID. So this browser then will send the ID back to the server with every subsequent request. So the ID allows the server to look up the correct user data stored in the session super global. Secure session with regenerating session ID. So to prevent a serious vulnerability, we call the session fixed session. You must regenerate the session ID. The session fixation allows an attacker to set a user session ID before they log in. You should call the session regenerate ID true immediately after successful login. So this command issues a brand new session ID to the user browser. So the true parameter is important because it saves delete the all potentially compromised session file. So this simple stop makes an existing all session ID completely invalid. Okay, secure session with logout functionality. So to correctly log out user, you must completely destroy the server-side session data. First, clear the session array with session equal to array. Next, you call the session destroy function to fully destroy the session. You should also optionally expire the session cookie explicitly on the user browser. A command like the set cookie session name time -36000 achieve this expiration. So destroying the session file ensure the old session ID cannot longer be used. Okay. Timeout. Okay, implementing a session timeout. This is very important step to limit the risk of hijack session. So you should store the current timestamp of the user's last activity in the session. The code for this is session last activity equal to time function. Okay. On every single page load, check if the session has exceeded the maximum time limit. If the idle time is greater than say 1800 session, which is equivalent to 30 minutes, the user is logged out. So remember to update the session last activity timestamp on every session page load. Okay. Cross-site request forgery, CSRF. Okay, so the cross-site request forgery trick a login user into submitting a request. This malicious request is sent to the site they are already authenticated with. This request uses the victim privileges to perform an unwanted action. So for example, like a hidden form on a malicious site can submit a change password request to your site. The defense involves using unique random anti-CSRF token for all forms. So these tokens are stored in the user session and also included in the form. Okay. The server then validates that the token from the form exactly match the one in the session. If the token do not match, the request is instantly rejected as a forgery attempt. Okay. Security headers with the content security policy CSP. So the CSP is a powerful HTTP security header. It works by whitelisting all acceptable source of content like the script, the styles, and image. The CSP effectively mitigates the access by preventing the browser from loading unauthorized script. The example header is the content security policy default source itself. Okay, so this specific The policy allows resources to be loaded only from the same origin as the document. So this is a critical defense in depth measures that provide an extra layer of protection. Other important security headers, okay? X-frame option. So this will prevent your site from being loaded as an iframe. Okay, so this is important measure to protect a user against commonly hijacking attack. And then we have the X content type option. This will stop the browser from mime sniffing the content. Okay, man in the middle. It can force the browser to strictly honor the content type that is declared by the server. And then we have the HSTS, the strict transport security. So this forces the browser to use HTTPS only for all future requests. HSTS can help to protect against the man in the middle attacks that try to downgrade the connection. So all of this header alongside with the CSP provide a critical additional layer for protection. So the principle of least privilege. Okay, so this is a fundamental security, a basic security concept for all database and system design. Instead, that the application or the user should have only the minimum necessary permission. Never connect to your user database using the powerful root user account. Okay. Instead, you can create a specific dedicated application user for database access. So grant the application user only the select, the insert, the update and delete from permission. So this will limit the permission to only for specific table that are strictly necessary. So this is greatly limits the potential damage if a severe SQL injection is ever exploited. Okay, keeping software updated. Okay, security vulnerabilities are continuously discovered in all software, including the PHP and libraries. The attacker will constantly exploit non-vulnerabilities in software, so you must regularly update your server operating system, web server, PHP, and your database. For example, you can use PHP. You can use tools like Composer to manage all your external dependency. And make sure to keep all Compose dependency consistently updated to patch vulnerabilities. Okay, so the last slides, topic number 6, the key takeaways. You need to always validate and sanitize all user input on the server side. You use prepared statement, which every query to completely prevent all form of SQL injection. Escape all output data with HTML special character function to prevent harmful cross-site scripting attack. Okay, you need to hash all the password using the secure password hash and verify with the password verify. Manage your user session securely by regenerating the ID and implementing a timeout. Security is not optional, it is fundamental requirement for building reliable web application. A combination of both input handling and defensive coding, this is important for a robust system security. Okay, and topic number 6. Okay, what next for topic number 7? So we have learned how to build style and interactivity and securely protect our application. So the time to integrate all these individual pieces into one major cohesive project. So the topic number 7 will build a full stack application and introduction to APIs. So we will seamlessly integrate the HTML, the CSS, JavaScript, PHP and MySQL together. So the integration will result a complete, functional and very secure web application. So you can be ready to begin your comprehensive capstone of your final project. Okay, so that's the end of the topic number 6. Thank you for joining, and we will see on the next topic number 7. Okay, thank you.